Well, thank you so much, everyone, for being here this evening, this soggy January evening, not words that often are put together here. This is one of a series of chats with local Bow Valley authors. And our goal with this series is to get to better know some of our writers who have strong connections here with the Valley, learn about their new projects, and see how ideas get from their heads onto the page and then into your hands, where you will devour those stories. But before I start, I am going to say thanks so much to Save On Foods, who has been a generous sponsor of this event since the very beginning. The table at the back, full of delicious food, is yours to enjoy because of them. Don't hesitate to say thanks next time you're in the store. And that food does not walk over here by itself. Chris and Carl, sitting in the third row there, they very kindly go over, pick it up, set it all up, and take care of that for us every one of these events. So thank you very much. Thanks to the Canmore Library, the Friends of the Library, and of course all of you and our authors, and something slightly different tonight, for being here this evening. So first of all, how many of you have been to one of these talks before? Just put your hand up. Okay, quite a few of you. And how many, is this a first time? Oh, very cool. Well, welcome, and I hope you come back. We do them several times a year. And they're always a really fun evening. And the snacks just keep coming, so if that's your motivation, come on back. Now, often we have 2 or 3 authors on the panel, but tonight, this is a little bit different. We have a chance to learn a little bit about the behind-the-scenes process of what happens when a book is created. So we're able to speak not only with the author tonight, Joanna Croston, but also 2 of the women who are featured in this magnificent book, Mountaineering Women, which is a collection of stories, including many mountaineering women, and we're going to learn all about that as the evening goes on. But you will have a chance to see how this works, how the stories come from the people who experienced whatever it was they experienced and then made their way into this book. So it's kind of a unique chance for us to understand a bit more about the process and how stories come to be told in this type of an anthology or a collection of stories. Over the course of the evening, you're going to have a chance to hear a short reading from the book. Joanna will read for us. We'll be able to chat about all the elements and the process of how the book was made. And then you'll also have a chance at the end to ask your burning questions. So try not to forget them by the time we get to the end of the evening. We also often have a book exchange table. If you remembered to bring one but didn't put it on the table in the back, at the end of the evening, go ahead, put your book out, take something else if it catches your eye. That's always a fun book swap. But that's all my preliminary comments. Let's get rolling. So the featured author this evening is Joanna Croston, no stranger to many of you in this room, director of Director of Mountain Culture at the Banff Centre for Arts and Creativity, has been on the Banff Mountain Film and Book Festival team since 2007. She has the enviable job of reading more than 50 mountain literature books and watching 300 mountain films every year. In addition, as if she would have any time for anything else, but she does. In addition to being a voracious reader and film enthusiast, she's an enthusiastic backcountry skier and has skied throughout North America, the Alps, Kashmir, Japan, and the Indian Himalaya. As a climber, she summited many of the classic 11,000-foot peaks in her own backyard of the Rockies. And her writing has appeared in many places: Highline Magazine, Grip, the Canadian Alpine Journal, Mountain Life, Alpinist Magazine, as well as having written other books as well. This is not her first rodeo. So comes to us with a wealth of experience and knowledge and expertise. Last year, or in 2021, she won an Alberta Magazine Award for an article she wrote about North America's first ever summiteur, Sharon Wood, who you'll hear much more from later on this evening. And so on, and so on, and so on. Her accolades just go on and on. So let's start, Joanna. One of the tricks we authors have to learn is how to do an elevator pitch. So in 60 seconds or less, oh, I know. Tell us, what is this book about?
Now I kind of want to go to the back and have a cookie and
Fair enough.
Elevator pitch of 60 seconds. Well, so, I mean, there was a really great publicist who wrote a really nice blurb, and I'll try and, like, reiterate that, but they did a much better job than I'm going to do. This book is actually, I think, it is about the stories of that have never been told, about 20 really great women climbers, and you know, there's this sort of legacy of women being maybe modest or a little more reluctant to share their stories, and so I kind of wanted to turn that around and put those out there in the world. And so Sharon and Sarah graciously agreed to be part of it, as did 18 other women. Some of the stories are quite famous, some of them you may never have heard of at all, and so I think we're going to talk about that later, maybe what are the most intriguing ones for me. Yeah, and I was pleased to have this publisher who wanted to have a really highly illustrated book with route maps and so on, and a timeline in the back, and really focus on kind of setting the bar high for what the genre needed, which was more stories from women.
Okay, so I'm going to stand because I'm very short and I can't see you in the very back row there. So you managed to shoehorn 20 women into this quite hefty book. Was that every woman on your wish list?
Not at all. I had a list of like about 80 women, actually, and I've been collecting the names through my job, through my work at the Banff Center and the festival. I've been collecting names of women for years. Just as I was going along, I'd be like, oh, I'd like to learn more about this person, and I would add them to this list I had. And I never really, the list was never meant to be a book. Well, not as I was doing it, I don't know what it was for. It was more just for me, like I thought, oh, well, maybe this person will be on stage, or maybe they'll be on our jury or something, or I need to know more about this person. So there was this list of 80 people I had. And originally I went to my publishers with this book of a list of 80, and they were like, that's crazy, we're not doing 80 women, it's too much, and we could only do like 200 words for each, so let's pick 20. So that was actually the first really hard job I had, was to narrow it down.
And that is my next question. How did you choose? How did the women in this volume wind up in your collection?
Yeah, it was really hard. I wanted to, as I mentioned in the very really executed elevator pitch, that some of the stories are really famous, and I didn't want to pretend like those women didn't exist, so there's some very famous people in the book, like Sharon, Catherine Destiville, Junko Tabe, who was the first woman to summit Everest. But then there's some younger, like less known women, maybe women who've never even had an article or written about them, or might just be on social, or not even. So I was really keen to include women like that too, as well as women from Asia too, who we haven't had tons of stories about. So. And that was actually really hard to get stories from non-Western nations.
And also not all living in contemporary, so that you do cover quite a history. It is, the subtitle is the history of whatever it is, climbing through history. Yeah. And so there was an effort to also track down women who were not contemporaries, who were no longer active.
Yeah, so Junko Tabe is a great example of that, from Japan, the first woman to summit Everest. But also Gwen Moffat, who's from the UK. She was the first British woman to be certified guide. She's still alive, she's 101. She's amazing. She was the most kind of cranky person I worked with. But in the best way, actually. I loved it. I had originally, in the book, written the story and called her Gwen through the story. And the first thing she said was, for God's sake, call me Moffat. Nobody calls me Gwen. That's ridiculous. And here I was like, oh, I'm trying to sort of be nice and friendly to this older woman, and she was having none of it. So. But back to your question. So yeah, so I wanted to find this mix, and they're crossing decades. You're right. Yeah, and I think that's part of the point too, is that history is being made. Right? It's not over. It's happening as we speak with people like Sarah and Brett Harrington in the book, for example. So I think it's important to keep sight of the fact that there's a lot of these women are alive and doing crazy things and great things still. So,
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it does cover a ton of territory. If you haven't yet had a chance to have a look at the book, the scope is amazing. So you've got these accomplished women, doing amazing things all over the world. Firsts here and huge challenges there. We're going to dig into that a little bit more. And then you have the problem, and a number of these women are either featured in books of their own, have written books of their own, are well known. So then, and this is 20 women in one book. How did you choose the stories that you were going to pluck out of these, some of them amazingly accomplished subjects?
Yeah, I tried to, in most cases, focus on stories that maybe hadn't been told before. Sharon's a great example of that. She handed me this chapter she had written from her memoir that didn't make it in, and that was a story that we ended up doing for the book, so that was really cool. And it was a pre-Everest story, which was also really important, and it was important to her, I think, and a really transformational climb, and really people should read about that too, not just the Everest story, although it's great. But yeah, so and then some of them I just couldn't not tell a story, like Junko Tabe, of course you have to tell that story. And then yeah, like with Catherine Destival, I mean, where do you start, right? Like there's 30 or 40 stories you could tell about her, and I picked probably a lesser known one too, although someone who was living in the 1990s in France would probably dispute that, and they'd say it was all over the news. But I think for our audience in North America, it's probably not as well known. So yeah, it was definitely challenging with women who had done many, many things.
Right. So you mentioned Sharon. Sharon's next on my list here to pick on. So Sharon Wood, if you don't know, if you've been living under a rock, was the first North American woman to summit Everest, an author in her own right. We featured her here before, and of course Sharon's well known around the area. So how did you hear about this project, and what was your first reaction when you heard that Jo was putting together this collection?
I was a bit surprised that Jo wanted to include me in the book. So that was my first reaction, and my second reaction after I got over myself was that I was really excited for Jo, because I think she's a great writer, and I thought if anyone could tell the story and in the way that you did, it would be Jo.
So you were all in quickly after you got over yourself. And what was really interesting to me when I read the book was Everest, as you mentioned, is a footnote in your chapter. So who decided what story to tell? Was it you, Jo, or was it you?
Well, I think one of the things that I think Jo does a really good job at is I think she really gets her subjects. And she had written a piece about me, an award-winning piece, earlier about the process, or my process of writing, and I'd never had that experience before. And so I came in really trusting whatever she would do. And I am really sick of the Everest story, and that there are other stories and good stories, and Jo could see that.
Right. So tell us in a nutshell what this story is about, the one that's included in the book, and why in discussion, why this was the one that you picked. Oh, you're handing the mic off.
Look, I thought you were asking Jo.
No, I'm actually asking you, so just give us you were So tell us what happened, what is the peak, what is the essence of this story? And then we'll talk to Jo about why she felt it was so important to include.
It's it was a new route on Huascaran Sur on the northeast face, right? Yeah. And it was it was a route that, and I think this is part of what Jo gets, is it was just the perfect route for me. It was a new route. It was super messy, super complicated, considered a death route, which is really super exciting. Because you could if you climbed this with the right strategy, you could probably pull it off, and nobody had yet. So, and for me, I went, this was in Peru. And I went on that trip. It was a 3-month trip And I knew Everest was ahead, and by this route, kind of a pretty challenging route, and with a very challenging team, right, Barry? And without Sherpas, and I was kind of wondering if I was worthy enough, right? I had some questions about self-worth, and am I really kind of an alpinist, or like, do I really like this, or am I just kind of aiming for the gold, right? And so this climb told me that I loved alpine climbing, and that despite a few things that went sideways, like I broke my shoulder pretty much the first day, and then completed the climb over the next 4 days, which was kind of tricky. It was a fascinating process that I went through, and Joe, I think, captured some of the thoughts and the essence of that climb. Is that a good answer?
That is a great answer, yeah, and it's a wonderful chapter. So, a couple of follow-up questions here, Joe. What was it about that particular story that really caught your eye as being worthy of inclusion? And then you mentioned there was some writing already done, but did you have access to journals, interview? What was the process of then pulling it together, reworking it for inclusion in here?
Sharon and I drank wine. So she was very generous in showing me the chapter, and so that formed the skeleton, I would say. And then we had a really good interview, a few hours. We did have a glass of wine. Talked about her cat a little bit. But Sharon and I had worked a little before, as she mentioned, but what I think was really important about that story, one thing I didn't want to do was have an Everest book, and I say that with full respect, but I think these other stories and stories of perseverance in the alpine environment are so important, and maybe like a mainstream audience doesn't kind of get that, but I think they will now. If you read it in the right kind of way, you can understand the severity of the climb, the significance of it mentally, all those things. And for you, I think it was a real test piece, right? I mean, it was, you wanted to do that, and then you knew you were going to be ready for the really big hills. So I wanted there to be alpinism in the book, because I think there can be, with my publisher is quite a large publisher, and so I think there could have been a tendency for them to just go, what's going to sell best? And it's not going to be Oscar Rounds, right? It's going to be something else. So
Something
maybe
really
we'll prove
sexy.
them wrong. That's what we'll do.
Yes, everybody please buy a couple of copies. Prove them wrong, because we need more books like this and a broader range of the types of stories that are out there. So this was a gift. I mean, you had easy access. You were able to ask questions, read, a draft chapter and so on. It's not quite so easy when the women you want to include are either dead or only speak Japanese. So, and both of those cases are covered in the book. How did you cope with secondhand research, or when you didn't have access to someone to go hang out and drink wine with?
Yeah, I was actually really lucky with a few of the women, because they did have memoirs, and that's a really great place to start. And the word count in my book is, there's about 2,500, 3,000 words per climber, and so if you have a whole memoir to work with, it makes it quite easy. As I said, Junko Taibe has had tons written about her, so that was kind of an easy one. Kei Taniguchi, who's in the book, who's from Japan, it was much more difficult. She'd written a few articles in Alpinist and the American Alpine Journal, but really hard to find information. So I relied a little bit on connecting with some of her friends in Japan who spoke English, but their proficiency wasn't great, although they were really helpful. It wasn't great, and so I did kind of really had to rely on secondhand articles and that sort of thing like that. That was probably the hardest chapter to write, was the Kei Taniguchi chapter.
Okay. One of the things I noticed as I'm going through this is it's not an Everest book. It's not a tick list book. It's not this laundry list of she did this and she did that and did it faster and did it, blindfolded and without oxygen or whatever. It's not that kind of book. There's some of that in there for sure, because the challenges that these women face are extraordinary. But in almost every chapter, there is some other story, some other underlying challenge that sort of runs parallel or behind or alongside whatever the climbing epic thing is that's going on. And those very personal stories often involve some personal hardship. And I'm going to try, turn to Sarah here. Sarah Hueniken, you've got a moment to collect yourself because I'm going to introduce you. For those who don't know Sarah, she's a sponsored mountain athlete, ACMG mountain guide in the Bow Valley for 20 years. She's an avid climber. She's helped establish new routes around the world, pushed the North American women's mixed grade climbing from M10 to M14, worked full-time running a business focused primarily on teaching, guiding, and empowering women in the mountains. She teaches and examines future guides for the ACMG TAP program. Currently, her focus is directed towards the Mountain Muskox program for mountain trauma and grief survivors thereof as the executive director, and also has created the Ice Avalanche Atlas as the current ice climbing ambassador for Avalanche Canada. Extremely accomplished. Now, your chapter focuses on Sarah's chapter focuses on an attempt to link up 3 winter ice and mixed climbs in the Ghost River Valley. So first of all, I'd like you to start by just giving us a very quick overview of the 3 climbs, what it was you were attempting to do, and then we'll circle back and talk about what drove you to do it in the first place.
Okay. How many of you here ice climb, first of all?
Used to.
Used to, yes. Some folks are smarter than others. There's a place called the Ghost Wilderness. Anyone know where that is? Okay, yeah. So it's about a 2-hour drive to get in there, to get to where you park, and then another 2 hours to approach this really beautiful cirque. And you're kind of in the middle of nowhere when you're back there, and it feels very remote and secluded and wonderful when you just want to get away from everyone. So that's one of the reasons why I went there. And the other one was there's 3 beautiful climbs. One's called Hydrophobia. It's 4 pitches, so 200 meters tall, roughly, of just this beautiful grade 5 ice climb. And then there's a route beside it that's a mixed climb that's been around for a long time called Cryophobia, and has a rating of M8, water ice 6 or something like that. And it's, you kind of have to find your way up, scratching the rock to get to the ice globs, and you keep climbing that way. It's also 200 meters. And then there's another more modern climb to the left of that, which was put up not very long ago, and it's significantly harder, M10-ish, 10 plus maybe, and it's also roughly the same length, 6 pitches. And it involves more steeper, like overhanging, kind of climbing on the rock to get to the ice. Was the question to explain the routes?
Yeah,
Sorry,
so just to give you an idea, and the plan was to climb them one after the other, right?
I had climbed them all individually and with a partner, and that's how you do climb. You climb with a partner, and that's what makes it fun. But I really was curious if I could lead every pitch of all 3 of those routes cleanly in one push in a day. So that was the goal.
That was the goal. And is it fair to say that you weren't just there to climb up, and you were coming back from something? I mean, you were trying to prove something to yourself as much as to anybody else. Is that right?
Yeah, there was a lot of points to it. I think one, I was definitely coming back from a very difficult, completely life-changing, horrible experience where I lost my friend in the mountains, and I felt quite responsible for that, or at least partially responsible for it, and very sad by the whole experience, and desperate, really. Like, it was an extreme low in my life, one that I wasn't sure I would get out of, or I wanted to get out of. So I needed something to be like, try to get up, try to wake up in the morning, try to go work towards something. Because without that, yeah, life is pretty meaningless. And that's where I was at. I was at like meaningless. Like, and so this was something that I thought about a long time ago, and it's like, well, this is an opportunity for me to, one, spend a lot of time in my head because I had 2 hours of driving, 2 hours of skiing to get to the climbs and thinking about these sorts of things. But it's also as a way to escape, because then when I was climbing, I had to just be there, right? And just think about that. So there's beauty in both of those places. I had to ask for help. I had to get my friends to help me on this journey because I couldn't do it on my own. I wasn't going to solo these things. I'm not like the other women in the book who I admire greatly soloing things, but it's just, I don't have that, that sort of confidence in myself. I needed people to be there with me, to support me with it. So that was also part of that healing journey, I'd say. And then I wanted to know if I could, if I could find the passion in myself again, that if that was worth it, if I wanted to see if, who I was again, rediscover if, what I'm made of in a relatively safe way for me. And it was a fabulous journey to do that.
It's interesting that the elements, this is a really moving chapter in the book, but you're not the only one in the book who had to struggle and overcome and lean on people and almost gave up and faced really dark moments. Why did you, Jo, feel compelled to include some of those, the darker side of what we do in the mountains, as very integral to these stories?
Well, I think it's all part of it. I'm, it's sad to say, but I think tragedy and loss in the mountains is pretty common and a normal part of a mountaineer's life. And so I guess I wasn't surprised that there was several, overcoming trauma stories. Sarah's is a really traumatic one. There's the Brett Harrington story too in the book where she's, at the point in the chapter where she's with her partner, but she then shortly after loses Mark Andre Leclerc. And so I think, I just think it's unfortunately part of a mountain life. And I think in many ways, mountaineers and climbers have found a way to make it something that propels them forward again. Whereas maybe in other sports or other parts of life, it's not they don't have the same approach. So, I don't know if I really answered your question though.
Yeah, it's complicated and it's real. And it's not that this is a dark book, not at all. It is a story about triumph and accomplishment and pushing forward and doing the hard things without shying away from why sometimes it is so hard. That is very much a reality. But the finding your way back to yourself and back to the mountains is a recurring theme that we see in a number of the women in these stories. Very, very moving. I'm curious, were you ever concerned, knowing that you were going to run into some of these people in the grocery store, what you were putting out there, what you were going to share now with a much wider public? Did that ever?
I was actually, I shared the chapters with both Sarah and Sharon before I sent them to my publisher, and I really wanted to, and we worked through a few things, and I really wanted to make sure that they were happy with it. Which isn't actually standard journalism at all. I think normally you just write it, and then, I don't know, you don't hope for the best, but you sort of, there's no obligation that you need to connect back with that person you've interviewed, but kind of in that's the sort of standard. And we talked about that a little bit before, so really there's only, 2 people in the book who I didn't necessarily, who I was a bit worried about, actually. And I wasn't sure about their reaction. And one of them I still haven't heard from, so.
Oh, interesting. Okay, do you want to just touch on that briefly before we?
Yeah, climbers are hard to get a hold of in the first place, let's be honest. And I know that from my work at the festival as well, how hard it is to get in touch with people, because they're always away, they're always doing things. But yeah, so I'm talking about Catherine Revolt, who's in the book, who wrote this brilliant memoir, which is called To Live, and if you get a chance to read it, you should do that. But she's also very like low-key, doesn't want media attention, is not interested in actually putting her story out there really at all. And so I wrote that chapter just strictly through research. She's the only person I didn't do an interview with, actually. So, and I didn't know. I still don't know. She may call me in a couple days and tell me she hates it. I have no idea. But sometimes I think we just have to do that. And her story is just so amazing. It was just like one of the ones I absolutely had to include. So, but, and you know this too, probably Nikki, as a writer, I think you just do your best. And to hear Sharon say that she had real trust in me is really, really, thank you for saying that. That's really nice of you. And that's kind of what you hope for, I think. That's all you can hope for.
Yeah.
So I hope that Elizabeth, when she does eventually read the chapter, finds that I did a good job, I hope.
All right, well, you can update us in the future.
I will.
While we're on this, so you had access to so many women, so many stories. Is there one in particular that really stuck with you, that you really couldn't let go of, and might you like to read a short piece from that? Or maybe there are two different stories, so your call.
Well, I will read from the Elizabeth chapter, but
Okay.
the Kate Tanucci chapter for me was one of the most, I just found it so hard to write because she was so young when she died, and she had so much to offer, and her life was ended short, and she was just this really, I met her once at the Pied d'Or in France, and she's just this really beautiful, shining light, and she just left too soon. So that was, and she was, I mean, really, anyone who knows her clients, she was doing really cutting edge stuff, gender side, like, a lot of the men I know are just like, wow, Kate, like sort of stars in the eyes. So, so I think that was a really surprising chapter for me. I knew about her from having met her, but that was a hard one to write. Yeah.
I'd love to hear a little bit. So we're just doing a super short reading here, so you get a sense of and I'll hold the mic for you. You can.
Do you want me to stand?
Yeah, you stand up.
Okay. So Elizabeth Revolt could hardly comprehend her predicament. Here she was, seeking shelter from the harsh wind in the icy depths of a crevasse, high on the slopes of Nanga Parbat in Pakistan. She was trying to stay awake and keep warm in temperatures well below -40. It's difficult for a non-climber to imagine finding safety and comfort in a gaping hole in a glacier, but Revolt knew that if this frigid cave could save her life, if she could just rest and collect her thoughts. It was the 26th of January, 2018. Only the day before, she had managed the impossible by ascending Nanga Parbat, dubbed the Killer Mountain, in the depths of Himalayan winter. It was a remarkable feat that had been achieved only once previously by a team of 3 men. This was Revolt's 4th attempt on the mountain, and she had just become the first woman to scale Nanga Parbat in winter. But deep in her frozen shelter, running the risk of severe frostbite, she began to wonder why she had returned to such an inhospitable place. Curled up on a precarious snow shelf inside the crevasse, she tried to keep the core of her body as warm as possible. It was thoughts of her husband, Jean-Christophe, that pulled her through the horrific night. If she could only survive until morning, a helicopter would arrive and she would be rescued, or so she thought. Early in the morning of the 25th of January in 2018, French climber Revolt had been in fine form, as she and her climbing partner, Tomek Makevich, had left their high camp at 7,300 meters just after 7:30 a.m. and had made a strong push for the summit of Nanga Parbat. Their strategy was to climb as lightweight as possible, a tactic known as alpine style. They carried only what they needed: water, some energy bars, goggles, spare mittens, and a basic first aid kit. They were intent on returning to their camp later that night, and so left their heavy rope behind. The weight would have slowed their progress, and both climbers were confident in their ability to navigate the terrain without being tethered to one another. Moving more quickly would enable a dash to the summit and then back to relative safety of Camp 4, where, along with their rope, They had left their sleeping bags, mats, and the most essential piece of their equipment, their stove. Both climbers had made the difficult decision to ascend without the use of supplementary oxygen. This would leave them at increased risk of altitude sickness, also known as pulmonary edema, and of course frostbite that could lead to the loss of fingers and toes. After 3 hours of upwards movement, the pair had gained 200 meters of vertical distance, and the sun blessed them with a bit of warmth as they emerged from the shady slopes. Revolt immediately put her goggles on. Years of experience climbing at high altitude reminded her about the dangers of snow blindness, a brutally painful condition where the eyes essentially become sunburnt and are rendered useless. She reminded Makevich about his goggles, and he nodded, reassuring her that she need not worry about him. With a burst of energy, Revolt set off again, determined that this time they would reach the summit. Slowly but surely they went up, pacing themselves, resting infrequently. As darkness fell, Revolt took the final steps to the 8,126 meter summit under the light of her head torch, arriving somewhere between 6 and 6:30 p.m. Elated, she waited for Makevich to join the celebration, his light visible through the frosty crystals of her breath. After years of previous attempts, 7 expeditions to the mountain for Makevich and 4 for Revolt, they were now on top of the 9th highest mountain in the world. It was a dream come true. Little did Revolt know that all the joy of reaching this wonderful goal would be sucked from her the instant Makevich joined her at the rocky cairn that marked the summit. It was there, well above the point of no return, he revealed he could no longer see. I hate reading that because there's a typo, and I can't unsee it. Every time I'm like, oh, the typo.
That's a great selection, actually. That's a very, it's a hard to read chapter, actually, for many reasons. But I'm not going to tell you how it ends, because you all need to go get the book. All 3 of you, in general, I'm going to ask this question, because it does impact all of us. When we look at mountaineering accounts, recognition of women has been slow. You mentioned that at the top. The Ladies Alpine Club in the UK did not merge with the Alpine Club, I was going to say proper, but that would be inappropriate, the other Alpine Club until 1975. Not because women weren't doing stuff. Gwen Moffat in 1953 was the first woman mountain guide in Britain, and but this was a recurring theme throughout all of these stories, was A, that they had not been told, and that the women were modest. Catherine d'Esteville being very uncomfortable being in the spotlight. When you, in general, if you look at the list of 20, those who were able to respond, did you find that they were all leaping at the chance to be included and jumping up and down saying, finally, somebody's paying attention?
No, only one person did that. It's a storm, yeah.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, most of the women were, like, Sharon's response, she was like, why would Joe want to put me in her book? Like, that was kind of the response. Or Sarah saying, I'm not like the other women in the book, and so, like, I don't, it was this crazy kind of reaction. And I was like, of course you need to be on this book. That was, but I guess I wasn't surprised by that. But the other thing I think, and maybe Sharon, you can speak to this a little bit, but I'm old enough to know this too, but, when I was in the outdoors, I was often the only woman in my little posse of skiing or climbing friends, and Sharon certainly was, I think. So I think there were just less women, of course, which of course would lead to less stories, but I don't know, do you want to talk about that a bit?
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, I had the privilege of growing up with people like Barry Blanchard and some pretty extraordinary climbers, pretty talented climbers, Kevin Doyle, and the list goes on, and I really feel like I grew up with these guys, and I was often the only person or the only woman who was, there were other women climbing, but they weren't as ambitious for some reason, and they weren't as, I don't know what it was, and so I was kind of just pretty ordinary. you know, really among my peers. There was, and I still am I'm a generalist. There's nothing really super extraordinary about my climbing skills or my, yeah, you know what I'm saying, do you? Kind of. And so I didn't really, and I wasn't a storyteller. So I don't think that it's really women's way. If I can bring something up from the previous event that we did at the Banff Film Festival, this was really interesting because Barry Blanchard stood up after we had all spoken. We did a similar thing, but we had six of your book subjects, right? Was anybody there? Was anybody at the Banff Festival event? Okay, I was like gobsmackingly, like it was amazing. I thought it was amazing. Anyway, Barry gets up at the end and he has this question. He says, "I've got a legacy question, and how would you like to be remembered?" And I wish that we had asked Barry, first of all, how he wanted to be remembered. I think there was a real missed opportunity there because this Hazel Finley took it as sort of like a man question, like how do you want to be remembered as a famous person, you know, and your legacy was to climb whatever the hell, right? But so what? And so Hazel Finley said, I don't, in her very special voice, I don't think women think that way. And then she went into wanting to be remembered as a good mother and as a good friend and as a good partner. And that's exactly, you know, when I had the opportunity to talk to Barry, was exactly what he wanted to be remembered by. So I don't know who's driving the agenda here, and in terms of why do we tell our stories? I think we tell our stories or want to tell our stories because it becomes a little more normal, right? Like Sarah, the courses that you've done and the lives that you've changed because you're this awesome climber and you've brought other women in. It's becoming more normal. So I don't think I answered the question at all, but I just had to say that.
So this is interesting. You bring up so many interesting points here. You know, who's driving this narrative? And I think part of the challenge is the way in which women climbers, and not just climbers, I think this applies to women in combat roles and so on, get treated differently by the press and by those who tell their stories than men in the same position. So let's talk about that for a minute. It is important to us to be parents and partners and community members and all those things, but why is it, and I'm just going to throw this out there for all, and I'll have you start with this, Sarah, why is it that women are challenged more often for going out and doing dangerous things, and how dare you do this because you're a mother and you should know better, and this kind of mentality I think is still out there, perhaps a little less than it once was. Would you like to comment on that, the narrative around women doing dangerous things?
Think on that one a little bit more. I mean, it's interesting because even last night we were sitting around the dinner table and our daughter brought up this idea of how hard it can be to be a girl in today's world, and the discussion was nature versus nurture. Like, is it societal or is it DNA, right? And I'd say there's a big part of women's DNA that naturally is adverse to risk. That's a generalization. You can nod no, yeah, but I would say, you know, there's probably a reason why we have our roles in society a little bit from our DNA, avoiding risk, because we don't like it as much either, generally speaking again. So I don't think it's completely societal. It's not completely cultural. There is some baseline DNA differences, And I think, I already forgot what the question was.
You're doing good.
No, you're doing just fine.
It's a very difficult question.
It is a difficult question, yes, yeah,
Yeah, risk in women.
yeah.
I mean, I don't really know where to go with that.
Like, do you think it's becoming more acceptable, Sarah?
For women to
Yeah.
take risk?
Yeah, than it was, let's say, when
I
Allison.
don't know, because I only know my life. I don't know all of the history of, in my lifetime, I've always felt like it was acceptable for me as a woman. So I don't think I have that baseline to really draw back on and see big changes in it. So maybe it's a better question for you, Sharon.
Well, actually, on the way to Sharon, Joe, one of the stories where this really comes up is Alison Hargrave's story. It came to mind. Do you want to speak to that? Just quickly sum up her story and comment on what changes or not that you're seeing in the narrative around women taking big risks, particularly those who have children.
I think it's a little different now, but I don't think it's something people still don't think about it. They do. I think women still get criticized. But Alison Hargrave's was a particularly strong case, I think, because she was a very prominent and very good climber and did a lot of Himalayan peaks and died and left 2 children behind. And there were suggestions too that she was the victim of domestic abuse as well, and so there's kind of these underlying themes around that story. But the press really laid into her when she died. It was a good thing she wasn't around to see that, but they really criticized her, and it was women journalists who were really sort of sunk their teeth in, if you will. I don't know if you remember all of that, but when I was reading and researching, and some of the headlines were just kind of appalling. And you wouldn't say the same of Tomek Makevich, who I was reading about. Oh no, I shouldn't tell you, but he dies. Sorry. and he has and he leaves children behind, but I don't think he received the same criticism. It was more like, oh, his poor wife and the kids, but not, he should never have been there. And that was the sort of narrative that was being presented for Alison. She should never have been there. So, and then of course Alison's son, Tom, became a really prolific alpinist in his own right, and then he died. And so there was even more, and then it sort of all got rehashed again. On the way to Sharon.
Yeah, I remember that panel with Alison Hargraves.
bet you did, yeah.
I don't know, it was 1928 or something. I don't know what it was. 1996, okay. Yeah, and I don't know. I think the media likes to drive its own narrative and keep people reading, and I think, sorry, but I think that was to Alison's benefit in some cases. And do I think it's changed? Well, I think just women discovering what gets them up or out of bed every morning, right? Like some of the reasons, like Sarah's reasons, are pretty different, right? Like to go do those 3 really like incredibly difficult climbs. But I think that's kind of the key, is what gets you out of bed in the morning, and what excites you, and what engages you. And yeah, there are risks and there are responsibilities, and I think we all have to make our own decisions, basically.
Just one final thought too, like I noticed too with younger generation of men climbers, like people like Sonny Trotter, for example, or Tommy Colo, they're really active family men, and they're really passionate about that, and they're really vocal about it. And I think maybe that narrative's changing a little bit. I don't really know, but it feels really different with that younger generation who are now having kids, men and women. I think.
Say one more. I also think overall, the tendency, the judgment and the blame, I'm hoping that's starting to change too. I feel like that dialogue is changing. It's something that I feel passionate about, and that's for both men and women, accidents, deaths, all those things. There's more understanding of the risks, both skill, luck, all those things in the mountains. and I think people are starting to, have a bit more compassion towards these things. I'm hopeful anyway. I feel like I see a trend starting, and I'm hopeful that that's for everyone, men and women.
Okay, just keep the mic there for a sec, because that actually leads into what I'd like to talk about next is actually legacy. It's a legacy question. So what has come out of your experiences? If you could speak a little bit about Mountain Muskox and what has the transformation and where perhaps you're seeing some of this hope for change, a change in attitude coming from.
Another tough, these are really tough questions. And maybe it's the bubble that I'm living in that I continue, like, hope is the thing that always pulls me forward. So I hope and I see what I want to see, and that is change, and that is people caring more for each other, understanding more about those who have survived or endured. People are talking about things more openly, I think, and sharing their feelings of loneliness and the need for their community to be there for them. I think the more people talk about that, the less seclusion there is when those things happen. And for sure, there's still, like, the Globe and Mail or the big Instagram things where the armchair folks have whatever they have to say because they can, and that'll probably always be there. But I also see people counteracting it now and saying, you weren't there, or, think about the family or this or that. And I think those little steps that everyone takes when they get brave enough to stand up and say, hey, just think about what you're saying or how people are feeling about what you're saying, I think those all make a big difference. So.
Joe, legacy of the book, what would you like to see this book accomplish in the wider world?
We don't think about those things. I just wanted to sort of get the ball rolling, to be honest. I just wanted people to be interested, and I want other people to write about stuff. I don't really have an agenda. There's no money in writing books. Maybe for Sharon.
So rich.
It's not about that. I think truly it was just about getting the stories out there, celebrating those stories actually, and I hope other women or men take up more stories and tell more stories. That's really what it was all about for me. Okay. And I wanted some of those stories not to be lost. Like, I was feeling like some of the, like Catherine Dustival in my book, like some of the young people don't know who she is, which I find amazing. Young climbers don't know who she is, and I was like, oh my God, we can't lose those stories, because she was just and is still remarkable. So that was a little bit part of my agenda, I guess.
Okay. I just say I'm definitely not a history buff at all. In fact, I wish I cared more. And I don't read very much, but when I got my hands on Joe's book and I was flying home to Ontario, and I was like, I should probably read my chapter. But I started it, and I really couldn't put it down the whole flight. And then I got, saw my family, yay, okay, it's time for bed, I gotta read my book. I read that book like from start to end. It is a really, really well-written book. It's a page turner, and it's hard for me to say that because I'm in it, but it is really, really well done. So great job, Joe.
And it's beautiful.
I have something to say about that. I think one of the special parts of this book is I think a lot of these women bust out of the stereotypes, right? And I think that's what excites me about the change I'm seeing in our culture, is that we are liberating others. Other people are feeling more liberated to be their weird, unusual, amazing, remarkable selves, right? And that's what I liked about your book. Because I was trying to find sort of the common thread that wove through all these stories. So thank you, Jo. Nice job.
While on the subject, and I'm very aware of time here, I want to allow some time for chatting and socializing, snacking, and book buying at the end. So only a couple more questions, but one comment I do have is this is a stunningly beautiful book. It's full of wonderful photos, illustrations of the mountains, and so on. How did that piece come together? This is a coffee table book. They're expensive to produce. Talk a little bit about the design and the actual physical creation of the book.
Yeah, so the publisher is Thames & Hudson, which is a kind of a world-renowned publisher for doing design, architecture, art, photography books. And so this is a real step out of the ordinary for them, was to dip into the adventure realm a little bit. So that was exciting to work with them on that because they were excited to go that way. So they, I worked with a whole bunch of people about the design, and they're real experts in that. But I did recommend Tessa Lyons, who's the illustrator in the book, for them to use Tessa, and she did a beautiful job of the illustrations of the mountains in the book, which they used for route maps and other elements. And Tessa's great. She's a climber from Wales in the UK, and she was thrilled to be part of it as well. The photographs are a pain in the ass. Anybody who's written a book will know like how much time the photographs take to get the permissions to find them, and a lot of the photographs, some people don't even have them digitized, right? So that was challenging. Luckily, I had a photo assistant who did most of that legwork. I would give her like a really low res web pull from a photo and say, "This is the one I want." And she would go find it. So that was really great. But then some, some others in the book just provided me with really great images. So that was really lovely. But yeah, I'm really thrilled about the way it looks. I couldn't have hoped for better, actually.
Yeah, it is a beautiful book. Is there a sequel in the works? You've got 60 more women and counting on that list.
Yeah, I haven't broached that subject yet with my publisher because I haven't seen a sales report. So I don't know. But I think so. I mean, I hope so. I hope they would like to do another one. We'll see. They have pitched me another project in the meantime, which is less appealing to me, but interesting nonetheless. It's a little bit out of my comfort zone, so that could be interesting.
Okay,
But
stay tuned.
yeah, stay tuned. But I think a sequel would be great. I'd love to see another book. Yeah.
Yeah, likewise. So quick question for our two other panelists here. Do you have any climbing or outdoors related projects that you're working on currently? And if not, where's your focus?
Yeah, well, I've just kind of entered my 50th decade, and it's kind of made me, not my 50th.
No, just kidding. Yeah, we understand.
Well, nice, thanks for laughing and bringing it to my attention. And it's sort of, I think, put a bit of fire under my butt. Making me realize, okay, I still have lots more I want to do, and I've got, the body still is wanting to do it, so I've got lots of goals, lots and lots of them, but they're all just kind of more small local things, that just personal things that I want to do, and and I just want to have fun doing them. I'm at the stage of life where it's not, I think back in the day it was like you did something to say you have done it, and now it's really about doing something to do it, and that's an enjoyable place to be, so I want to stay right there.
Perfect, that's such a great message for all of us, I think. Sharon.
Nice. I know this might sound a little weird, but I'm not really a goal-oriented person. I'm more of a process-oriented person, and I'm always looking for the thing that's going to get me out of bed in the morning, right? That I can feel excited about or engaged in, and so I just want to keep moving. I just want to keep climbing. I don't have any brand name peaks that I'm looking out for. I've got a grandson that's going to turn 1 year in 2 days. That's kind of cool. That's what's getting me out of bed these days, because I look after them most mornings.
All right, we've got a few minutes here for questions. So anything at all for any of our panelists here today, just stick your hand up and I'll come bring you a mic unless you have a big voice. Yes.
I have a question for you, Sarah. Okay. Now that you're in your 50s,
She looks really good.
it sounds like you have a young mind. And so is your body fighting that young mind at this stage?
Did you all hear the question in the back there? Yeah.
I think first of all, I feel very, very fortunate to have a physically capable and healthy body. I know that's not the case for very many people. So I celebrate that honestly every day. And I also am very prepared for that to change. Like, it's not something I take for granted, and it's not something I know is going to be there forever. It's one day at a time. So I think I have an older mindset. Like, I'm very prepared for what's coming. I think I am anyway. I'd like to think I am. But I think in terms of the older mindset, it's the first time I feel like I can be more present in my life. And that's what I mean by that. The younger mindset was always looking forward, and now I don't really want to look forward. I want to be right here, right now, and try to make the most of that, try to appreciate it and be grateful and see what comes with that.
Nice.
Any other questions?
I got a question.
Oh.
And it's not a big complicated one, but yeah, do you find yourself any kind of waiting or favor or even bias towards going out with other women? Is that important to you, or is it just partners are partners, and so that's setting up an answer? But yeah.
I don't vary. I just want to be with my friends.
Yeah.
Right? I can climb with you, right? And I always have selected my partners that way, right? It's kind of who I trust being with and who I enjoy being with. And there's another one of my favorite adventure partners in the back there, Marnie Virtue.
Get right up.
Did you have a
Oh, no, but
No?
did other people want to answer that question? Or berries?
Oh, yeah, feel free.
Sarah, you do women's courses,
Yeah.
do you?
No, I mean, I would agree with Sharon. It's about being out there with your friends, but I do think there's something special and empowering with being with another woman in a physically difficult task. There's something, and I think it's not the actual physical part of it, it's the mental part of it, recognizing that I need to hold my weight, and I don't have an out, and I want to hold my weight then. And sometimes when I'm with male partners, my mind weakens and I let myself fall into stereotypes sometimes, or think that I don't have to, pull my weight in the same way. So that's honestly how I know maybe some people don't like that answer, but with another woman, I do feel like, I'm more involved somehow in my own self.
Did you want to comment all on that, Joe?
Yeah, I do. I actually just want to say that although, I found myself being the only girl often when I was adventuring, some of my best climbing partners are here tonight who are men and who have always been supportive. And so, I never felt the discrimination, I would say, that some of the other women felt. I would say I felt really supported. So I would agree that it's about having a good time with your friends. And I've only recently just started climbing with only women. That's really kind of weird. In a good way. I was like, oh, this is really different. It is really different.
All right, one last question. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll just stand over here so
can project there. So, I really like what you've been saying, because this is actually a question that's been stirring in my mind most of the evening, and this whole empowering and moving forward of the female athlete. In the sense of, I know both Sharon and of course Sarah teach a lot, guide a lot, and particularly Sarah, you spend time doing strictly women's courses. For me, I find that I actually get really bummed out when I see women in the back seat. You know, they're in the back of the trail, they're following their boyfriend, their partner, whatever they're doing. That actually kind of really annoys me to see that kind of thing, that they're kind of put in the back seat type thing just because of their gender. So my question is, when you teach these courses or guide these women, what do you hear from them? What stands out in your mind as what was motivating for them to step out of that role and come do a peak with you, or do a difficult climb with you, or take your course? And what are some of those motivators that are for those people, and how can we, when I say we I mean men, help kind of foster that and build on it so that they don't feel they have to, so that we can, the right things to say to kind of put them in the forefront. Sorry, long question. I get it from her.
First of all, there's nothing anyone is doing wrong.
Yeah.
And there's nothing you need to do better. A lot of the times when women are in the back, it's because they've chosen to be there. It's not because anyone's told them to be there. There's so many things going on around all of that. So I just want to really emphasize that that's not, no one's doing anything wrong or right there. I think when women get together, sometimes there's or what I hear in my courses sometimes is that they feel it's easier to fail when they're surrounded by other women. And I don't know why that is. Maybe for men it's easier to fail when you're surrounded by men. It could very well be that too. I don't really know.
It's not easy to fail.
It's just not easy to fail. And when you're learning something new, it's gonna be difficult, and you're gonna fail, and you might be embarrassed about that. And it's nice when you don't have to be, when you can just try your hardest, and everyone's trying hard and laughing at it and being okay with not being the best. And yeah, I think everyone's gonna find that environment wherever they find it. And I think some men find it with other men, some women find it with other women, some find it just with whoever. Yeah, so I think it's accepting that learning process for everyone, that's a hard place to put yourself in, and just, yeah. I don't know if that helps answer.
That's good, thanks.
I'll try it. I'll give that one a go. Fabiola, I don't know if I can agree with you totally. I have 2 daughter-in-laws, and they both climb harder than my sons. They're climbing 13s, and they're competition climbers. My sons are pretty good climbers as well, and my sons are really proud of their partners. And it's quite funny because they are very aware of the stereotype, and they will go up to these climbs sometimes. And like Elise Sethna is my daughter-in-law. That makes me very famous. and she kind of plays along, you know. She sees somebody working a route, you know, and she says, "Oh, would you mind if I give that a try?" You know, and he stands aside, you know, and goes to pull down the rope. Oh, to just leave the rope up. She pulls the rope down and hikes it, right? And it's something that the guy's been working on for days. And I do agree with Sarah. I think it is sometimes a choice, at least these days. And having been the mother of sons, I think it's harder to fail as a man than it is as a woman. I think we have more freedom as women, and I know I'm, making a generalization, but to kind of ask more questions and put ourselves in more learning opportunities than men do, just from my own observation.
Did you want to add anything to that, Joe?
I don't know, it's pretty hard to top that.
Yeah. All right, in the interest of time, we're going to leave it there. We are not, however, being rushed out of the library. So the library is always very generous with us in this space. So please feel free to socialize, chat privately, buy books. We're going to set up a signing table at the back for the three of you. So you could have everybody sign their chapters in the front of the book and whatever your heart so desires. There's still snacks back there. If you want to have a look at what's on the book swapping table, there are a couple of things back there as well. And otherwise, I hope to see you here for the next Fireside Chat, which will be in the fall. Keep an eye on your social posts and calendars in the library website. And for tonight, thank you so much for all of our guests for coming and for all of you.